Good evening, everyone. My name is Vanessa Torres, and I am the chair of the WA State Advisory Board for CEDA, and my day job is at South 32, where I'm Chief Operating Officer. As someone who has been in the mining industry for around 30 years and worked in 3 continents with a dozen of different commodities, from iron ore to critical minerals, it is my pleasure to facilitate today the session Extracting More from Mining. We will hear today from our keynote speaker, the Honourable Madeleine King, Federal Minister for Resources and Minister for Northern Australia, as well as have a conversation with her and with Dino Otranto, CEO Metals of Fortescue, and with Grant Wilson, Executive Chair for Tivan. But firstly, it is my honour to invite the Honourable Madeleine King to the stage. Minister King has been a member for Brand since 2016 and have held her portfolio since 2022. Brand has the Kwinana and Rockingham communities at its heart. For those who are interested in the role of minerals in decarbonisation, Kwinana is at the forefront of refining and processing of critical minerals in WA, and therefore our country. From raw materials to refining nickel and lithium, everything happens in Kwinana. And Minister King was born and raised in that region, and in her career has already made key contributions to enabling Australia's resources industry to deliver more from mining. So without much further ado, let's hear about the Minister's plans.
Thanks very much, Vanessa, and Vanessa's absolutely right. Kwinana is where it's all happening, I have to admit. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we are gathered, the Ngunnawal people, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. I'd like to thank the Chief Executive of CEDA, Melinda Salento, and everyone involved in organising and hosting this event here in the Parliament. I look forward to the panel discussion a bit later on. And thanks to CEDA for the opportunity to speak to you today. One of the great Shakespearean themes is the difference between what seems to be happening on the surface and what is really going on beneath it. What lies on the surface might appear to show one thing, but it is only when we take a deeper look that we can really know what's going on. And that's a bit like this place. The Australian resources industry supports this nation by looking beneath the physical surface of the earth to tap into the riches that lie below. Instinct and luck have played a part in unearthing some underground mineral deposits, but for the most part, it has been science and technology and hard work based on reason and experience that has resulted in our largest economy-making discoveries. Where I come from, in Western Australia, lots of people and families have had long and proud connections with the mining sector. Go to Perth Airport at 5 a.m. on a Tuesday or Monday morning and you'll see the army of workers in high-vis and steel-cap boots waiting for a flight to Karratha or Paraburdoo to begin a swing at a mine site or in a processing plant or at an offshore rig. For these workers, the resources industry is a source of highly skilled and well-paid work. But there are many Australians that have no connection to the resources operations of WA or Queensland or in the Hunter Valley. They may have never been to a mine site and they haven't been able to see how sophisticated and innovative modern mining is. And as a result, many may not understand how their lives have benefited from the resources industry and how much our modern lives depend upon it. And indeed how modern and technologically advanced modern mining is. I'd personally like to see more members of Parliament and members of the media visit resources projects to see them firsthand. And on that point, I should thank the Mineral Councils of Australia and the Chamber of Minerals and Energy in Western Australia for organising visits to resource projects for MPs and senators. And I think it's really unfortunate that such visits are subject to political and activist attack from some who seem to think that MPs can simply rock up to the front gate and knock on a boom gate and then get entry to a mine site. never mind the remote location or the safety concerns or even the quarantine requirements to protect the environment. When it comes to learning more about the industry and the workers in it, it doesn't matter where an elected representative stands on the resources sector or the use and extraction of fossil fuels. After all, we know we don't all agree on everything. What remains important is that people shouldn't be demonised for visiting and seeking to learn about and indeed questioning the sector that is the backbone of the economy. The resources industry laid the foundation of our nation's prosperity. It provides the building blocks of our modern economy. It generates economic activity in the regions, and it will continue to deliver year after year. It did so through the COVID-19 pandemic. The closure of WA state borders kept our nation's mineral and gas exports flowing and directly saved the economy from collapse. Royalties from mining go to the building of roads and hospitals. The revenue Australia earns from the resources industry contributes to paying for our Defence Force. Australia's resources play a key role in our alliances and our relationships with the rest of the world. Our resources are vital to the energy security of nations such as India, Japan, the Republic of Korea, China, Singapore and Vietnam. And crucially, our resources will be of central importance in the energy transition taking place in this nation and the economies of our trading partners. The government's plan for a future made in Australia will maximise the economic and industrial benefits of the resources sector. It will secure Australia's place in a changing global economic and strategic landscape. Through a future made in Australia, we are investing in the skills, industries and manufacturing that will be vital to our net zero future. The Future Made in Australia plan puts the resources industry at the heart of the Albanese government's plan to grow the economy, to create jobs and to secure our future. This was the most significant budget for the resources sector in a generation, and that's because this government backs the resources sector. We can't make a future for this nation without the resources industry. But to support that sector, we need to know first what lies beneath the surface. We need to know what our great country is made of. And that's why the government has locked in generational funding for Geoscience Australia. We are providing $3.4 billion to Geoscience Australia through the Resourcing Australia's Prosperity program to help find more of those economy-making discoveries to support future generations of Australians. This is an investment in science so that we can build a better future. This is a very important nation-building commitment that will drive growth in the resources sector through future decades of pre-competitive data collection. An investment in science to find out what is beneath our feet so that we can build our future. The program will focus on critical minerals, strategic materials and groundwater, naturally occurring hydrogen or potential sites for hydrogen storage. Under this plan, we will progressively map the entire continent and share that data with the community for free as public science so explorers can prioritise where they look deeper for the minerals we need to keep our economy humming. And there was more in the budget. One of the most significant measures announced was a 10% production tax credit worth $17.6 billion over 14 years for all critical minerals to drive critical minerals processing in this country. These tax credits will drive greater capital investment and provide an incentive for domestic processing for future projects. They will only be paid when producers turn a profit. This is no handout. It provides incentives for investment and miners will be investing their own hard-earned money before they get access to a tax credit. 2 weeks ago, or a few weeks ago, I would have said that Angus Taylor's opposition to the critical minerals production tax incentive was one of the most tin-eared and bizarre policy decisions of any party in recent memory. But now I find myself talking about the possibility of a nuclear reactor in Collie. To quote Ferris Bueller, life moves pretty fast, especially in this place. In addition to our tax credits and generational support for pre-competitive data, the government will work with states and territories to look at developing common user minerals processing hubs. Now that might sound like a small thing, but targeted and smart government support for common user infrastructure in places like Kalgoorlie or indeed Gladstone will cut costs for producers, increase profits and create jobs. They are all smart measures designed to play to this country's strengths. And I want to thank both the Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, and Treasurer Jim Chalmers for supporting and backing these important initiatives. Both the Prime Minister of this country and the Treasurer of this country understand the important role our resources sector plays in supporting our economy and in building these industries of the future. Now I can hear some of you thinking perhaps that these investments in the science of geology, production tax credits for the resources industry, scoping investments in road and rail are all things that you might have seen the Liberal Party think to support. And that might be back in the day, but it's certainly not the case now. I know we hope that events like CEDA, we could depoliticise subjects like resources or the development of the critical minerals industry, but we simply cannot do that with the outrageous haste in which the Dutton opposition has announced it will oppose the production tax credits for critical minerals and will instead seek to nationalise the national power grid and build a national network of state-owned nuclear reactors. Peter Dutton has complained that production tax credits is welfare for billionaires, but a state-owned network of uncosted nuclear reactors is somehow economically rational. This is an alternate universe in which we're existing. It is important when we talk about growth and the future of the resources sector that we are clear about the choices for Australia, before Australians and before Australian industry. A sensible, well-planned policy to incentivise critical minerals and processing, or an uncosted nuclear industry with so many known unknowns that I simply don't know where to start. And mark my words, the Coalition will seek to claim savings from opposing our critical minerals incentive scheme to fund this nuclear fantasy. The business community gets that this is a completely bonkers policy. Production tax credits, on the other hand, has the full support of the business community. I thank them for it. There is the strong support from the Association of Mining and Exploration Companies, the Chamber of Minerals and Energy in WA, Wesfarmers, Lynas Rare Earths, Liontown, Ardea Resources, Australian Vanadium and Mineral Resources, just to name a few. As I've often said, the road to net zero runs through the resources sector. Australia's critical minerals and rare earths are key to building renewable technologies such as solar panels, batteries and wind farms, as well as defence and medical technologies. And our ambition through the Future Made in Australia policy is to do just that: mine, process and make more here in Australia. I know that members of CEDA have a good understanding of the central importance of resources to Australia's economy and our standard of living. But it is important that groups like CEDA keep talking widely about the industry and its importance to our economy and the energy transition. Because resources need to be supported in the face of people who do not understand or do not want to understand. As part of the Future Made in Australia, we want to ensure that we do more of the refining and processing of value commodities here where they are found. And our production tax credits and investment in geoscience will help make this a reality. And we've not come to this plan in the last minute. This government has long understood that the answers to great economic challenges of our time would be underwritten by our world-leading resources industry. We've been working closely with our international partners to develop our critical minerals and rare earths industries. We have partnerships with Japan, with Korea, the US, Canada, India, the United Kingdom, France, Germany and the European Union. We've been working hard to get the world to understand and recognise the importance of environmental, social and governance standards in the pricing of minerals. And I would argue there's a certain hypocrisy in some countries racing to build more wind turbines, batteries and solar panels with the aim of bettering our world if the minerals used to build those things are sourced from projects with such low ESG standards. So we are accelerating trade efforts to realise the market premium of these high ESG standards in critical minerals in Australia. And I can say on that point, I'd very much like to thank the work of our ambassador to the US, Kevin Rudd, for his advocacy in this area. Supply chains for critical minerals and rare earth elements face numerous risks, including high market concentration. Production is concentrated in a small number of countries outside Australia, making their supply vulnerable to trade disruption. Australia wants to help diversify supply chains and both reduce global reliance on minerals produced with lower ESG credentials and withstand geopolitical disruption. Reaching net zero will require more mining, not less. It will mean more exploration and more investment. It might seem contradictory to some, but reason tells us otherwise. Australia's critical minerals will be central to reaching net zero, and we want to do more than just mine and export them. That is why the government has placed the resources industry at the heart of its economic policy making. That is why this government is supporting our all-important resources industry, because we understand that the resources industry is crucial to creating jobs and wealth for future generations of Australians. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Minister, for this kind of inspirational speech for someone who's been mining. So thank you. And thank you, Dino and Grant, for joining us. I encourage the audience to ask questions through the app. We only have one question so far, so please, I'll give you a 5-minute kind of a slot for you to put our questions, because I'll start with a first question for Dino and then Grant. We just heard the Minister talking about what government is doing towards enabling mining and critical minerals in Australia. And my question to you is, what's the role of your company in this picture? So maybe Dino first.
Thanks, Vanessa, and thank you, Minister. It's very encouraging to hear the words from a fellow Patriot WA person in Kwinana. So we as an organisation started our life in the Pilbara. Within 20 years, we've built the 4th biggest iron ore company on the planet. A couple of years ago, we actually diversified our business into green metals, green energy, and also green technology. So we like to think we're at the forefront, actually, of demonstrating to the world you can decarbonise industrial operations like ours. And our public commitment of real zero by 2030 is out there, and we're well on track, Vanessa, in achieving that.
Thank you. Grant?
Hi, everyone, and thanks, Minister King. Good to see you again. So Taiwan's operating at the opposite end of the spectrum than FFI, so it's very complementary today. We've only been around for about 18 months. We're operating in extremely remote jurisdictions in Australia. We have about 3 legitimate critical minerals projects at different stages of development. The forefront is a critical mineral referred to as fluorite, and I'm indebted to the Minister because fluorite was put on the critical minerals list in December last year, and that enabled us to fast track to a very important announcement a couple of weeks ago, which is quite a landmark. It's not been achieved in the sector for about 10 years, which is a joint venture with Sumitomo Corporation of Japan with the involvement of JOGMEC. That's the Japanese organisation for metals and energy security. So a very important international partnership for our relatively new company. We have an important exploration project near Alice Springs. I grew up in Alice Springs, so this was one of my primary motivations to jump into this sector and to change things. Very focused on positive community impacts, working extremely closely with traditional owners around Alice and also in the Kimberley. And then finally, on the topic of common use precincts, which the Minister referred to, very important topic, well enunciated in the critical minerals strategy. We're a major proponent at the Middle Arm Sustainable Development Precinct in Darwin. This is the intersection of big solar, big gas, and for Taiwan, big batteries. We also own the world's largest, highest grade vanadium resource, just on the other side of the WA border. So we're on track there on a 5 to 7 year view through a lot of cooperation that is required through the Commonwealth's very important investment to bring that common use precinct to life in Darwin.
Thank you. Well, thanks to the audience. We now have a few questions. Just one question. It relates to critical minerals and energy supply. So how can we promote critical minerals processing and refining in Australia with limited certainty around gas and energy supply? Yeah.
Well, we do have supply and we need more supply, and as I've said as much in the future gas strategy, which was a strategy worked on for a year, announced in the budget before the most recent one. And that made very clear the need for gas as a heat source and energy source to enable the processing of critical minerals. What we find is most of the critical minerals so far are in places that also happen to have a lot of access to gas, so that's fortunate, but also that needs to keep happening to enable that to happen. So the processing to happen, and therefore the green energy technologies to be able to be built off the back of those processed critical minerals. So in Western Australia, for instance, there is a good supply. There's a domestic gas reservation, and that's been reviewed by the state government at the moment to ensure that is fit for purpose in a state where the biggest growth in the use of gas is in the minerals processing industry. It's not through consumer demand, it is in mining. So that's important that the West Australian government is dealing with that issue, and it'd be similarly in Queensland as well. And that is a state that is enabling more gas, but really importantly, any gas projects do have to respect the drive of the country to net zero by 2050, and they fall, if they do fall under the safeguard mechanism, they work with that and in that regime. But as we have said in the Future Gas Strategy, it's very clear we will need more gas, and I think everyone's trying to unlock that supply as we speak.
Yeah, and I certainly agree with that being in WA. There's a question here about transition to green steel processing, but perhaps for Dino, because I understand Fortescue is with plans for green iron in the Pilbara. Can you tell us more about it?
Yeah, sure. And so just a real quick lesson on how to make steel. So to make steel, you need to put a bunch of iron ore and you burn it with coal. You get a whole bunch of carbon dioxide as an emission source. There is another way now. It's been around for some time, and that's through the use of hydrogen. So you can put iron ore and hydrogen together to make that green metal. 6 months ago, we have seen China really pivot aggressively to their clean energy transformation agenda. Recently, we hosted Premier Li 2 weeks ago, and it was reinforced through him directly to us, is that China needs the critical elements through Australia, but notably a source of green iron that they can then feed their steel mills. And ideally, that's without using coal as a source, so you do not have the emissions. So they see the next wave of resources coming out of Australia, not only the iron or the metal, but actually harvesting the sun and the wind as a resource. For us at Fortescue, that means turning our iron ores into a higher grade product in the Pilbara, investing in infrastructure, downstream processing facilities to turn our 55 to 60% iron ores out of Australia into a 95% plus green metal that we then can export to China. And I urge the audience to understand the dynamics that are actually under play at the moment, where China is on a mission. Last year alone, nearly $1 trillion of investment went into over 350 gigawatts of solar and wind capacity into China. So this is real for them, and they see that being repeated over the next 20 years to hit their ambitious net zero targets, which align with us. And we think Australia is at a very unique position to take advantage of that. Within 12 months of Fortescue, we will have Australia's first green iron plant that will be commercially run, producing more than 2,000 tonne per annum of green iron, beneficiated in WA with solar panels to make hydrogen, and our iron ores exporting that to the world. And I think that is a huge opportunity that we cannot let slip to other jurisdictions around the world.
Thank you, Dino. There's quite a few questions here voted related to Australian approvals, landscape, and permitting. And And I must add that was one of my pre-prepared questions as well, because one of the key challenges in developing new projects is going through a number of approvals in local, state, and federal levels. Usually, and across most jurisdictions, permitting takes more time than engineering and building a new mine and refinery. Perhaps the only exception I saw over 30 years as being the recent FAST-41 process that US starting to roll out. So perhaps starting with the Minister, how government is thinking of streamlining the path towards making the Future Made in Australia plan happening through the building of new mines and processing facilities?
Well, in the last budget, there's a significant sum committed to that. In many spheres of government, including approvals processes, but is others as well, there was a stripping out of the public service, which means that all permitting took longer, and all sorts of things took a lot longer because the former government really didn't want to pay for the public service, and you need the public service to do these approvals. So we're investing in making sure that the capacity of government is there. We also are working, as everyone knows, on the EPBC Act. It's a big body of work, and Minister Plibersek and her team and her department are doing a tremendous job in that. We'll have our differences around it, and I accept that. But it's important to make sure we do it well, without delay, of course, but also with proper consultation, which is what we're embarking upon. What is really important in this country, I think, to maintain the social licence and community support for mining, no matter if it's traditional mining like iron ore or nickel or gold or whatever, as well as critical minerals and rare earths, that you do have proper environmental approvals, because if we let that slip, people in this room in that industry will realise that you'll lose community support for mining, and that's not a good path to be on. We do want community support. The other comment I will make around competitiveness in the international market, we are a high cost country. Of course we are. We have high living standards. Workers have good pay, good conditions as well. They should. They work in safe workplaces. I mentioned the ESG standards, and that all comes in to play. I remember when we first came into government, I met with the Secretary of Energy, Secretary Granholm from the US, and she thought it was remarkable how quickly our approvals were. And though the US may have invested in that, they don't have many operating mines. They just don't, and neither does anyone else. Like Canada is similar to us, but in Europe, the European Union, there are hardly any. They outsourced their mining a number of years ago. And so we actually are in a very good place on approvals. You might not think it to read the papers or anything, but we can do better, and there is certainly in my department and the Department of the Environment, I think we talk about it always, continuous improvement in relation to our work, and that's what we're seeking to do.
Thanks, Minister, and really pleasing to hear that. So now for Grant, who is at the moment developing a critical minerals project. Grant, how many years do you believe it will take to make your vision a reality, and what are your biggest challenges, not only in permitting, but including that as well?
Sure, thanks. So I think I'll just sort of emphasise some of the observations from the Minister just to that point, because when I came into mining, I was told, and you can see the data, it takes 15 years on average to go from discovery to first production. In critical minerals, but in larger mines as well. One of the advantages I think we've got at Taiwan is we're a hyper-productive, relatively small, extremely dynamic and agile company, and we've prioritised de-risking the longest lead items first, typically environmentals, but out where we're operating, it's the land use agreements with Indigenous owners and traditional owners, and especially the land councils. And we've put a lot of work into this. Here I'd key off the wonderful welcome for country this morning, this concept of mutual respect. So we think of a triangle of relationships, a triangle of trust, if you will, where you've got your land council, you've got your traditional owners, and you've got your proponent. And you need mutual respect between all those three groups. And that's what I see failing in many cases. And it's something that we've taken really important steps towards articulating and redressing, and we're having great success in the Kimberley. I think you'll find in the Kimberley especially, if you approach traditional owners with a kind word and a smile, you will go far. And that's our experience. So our project delivery timeframe for the fluorite is 3 years. We're extremely confident we'll be in first production with the support of our Japanese partners early 2027. So this will be one of the most geostrategically important projects in the country because we're exporting fluorite, which is absolutely vital for semiconductors, which is absolutely vital for artificial intelligence, for example. But we've been able to secure the full backing of the top echelon of Japan and indeed the Japanese government. But I think we'll be able to deliver it quickly because we've got that project finance backing and because we've got that standing, particularly with the traditional owners, because your environmental reports end up going out to community for feedback and they're going to advocate for us. And so I think because we're small, our projects, 4 million tonnes a year of mining, so we're not up to the mega projects. We've got a hydro initiative where we'll be able to bring in the power from Argyle Dam because Rio's decommissioned the diamond mine next door to us. I think we'll prove to the sector that it can be done better. And in many ways, I want this project to put like a light on the hill, to challenge the junior resources sector, and especially the critical minerals sector, the emerging critical minerals sector, to set better norms and precedents and to deliver for the country.
Thanks. Interesting question from the audience, and now I'll ask Dino to answer that. As a CEO, he's always talking with investors. So the question asks, our 4 major domestic banks seems to have less enthusiasm than the panel for resources activity. Activists seem to get a great sway. Funding is difficult and often expensive. Can this be changed?
Yeah, it's a great question. We certainly see a difference in jurisdictions that we operate in as well. But to Grant's point, often the objectives are actually the same. That the shareholder, the bank, the proponents, the traditional custodians, it's then trying to work in between all those groups to make sure there's a common language and a common understanding, and that there are win-win relationships that work on all parties. And I think when you get that magic together, a lot of that activism or that negativity for mining really does go away, because to the Minister's point, we cannot meet our objectives of net zero or real zero without mining activity. It's just will never happen. And I think once people understand the industry that we're in, we are responsible players. And we need to do better, of course. But once everyone has that common view, I don't really see it as too big an issue. And once you conquer that, there is a wall of money out there. Yes, there has been a retraction over the last few years on an ESG agenda. We accept that. However, if you can conquer that complexity, the money is there and the investments will come.
Thank you. The next question is the most voted question from someone from the audience. And it's again for you, Minister. Sorry, you're very popular today. Downstream processing cannot happen with a climate trigger. Will the Minister rule out a climate trigger in nature-positive reforms?
The nature-positive reforms are work that Minister Plibersek is working on right now, as I alluded to earlier. I'm going to let that proceed. I don't... there are a lot of things that are going to be considered within the nature-positive reforms, as everybody here knows. There'll be lots of demands on government around what goes into it, as you can imagine, from so many places. It's almost unimaginable, actually, the kind of pressure that will mount on this. And I do understand people's concerns. What we're really focused on is making sure that these reforms work for industry and for the environment. The banning around of the word climate trigger by those who don't like it and those who want it, as equally as unhelpful in every context because it just sets hairs running no matter where you go, and anything I said on this today would set hairs running no matter what. So I'm not going to comment on it, but I will make this very clear. That Minister Plibersek and her team and my team, but this is of course her portfolio, is very focused on making sure the reforms work for industry, but very importantly also work for the environment, because that they're not working as well as they should right now.
Thank you. Grant, besides fluoride, what are the other critical minerals that Australia may have underestimated?
So, as I said in my intro comments, we have just adjacent to the fluoride, the world's highest grade and largest vanadium resource. And vanadium's had a really difficult history in this country. People have been trying to build projects for 10 to 15 years. And it's got this incredible use case, which is long duration energy storage, so vanadium redox flow batteries. They were invented, we talk about sovereign capabilities, they were invented here in Australia by Professor Maria Skylas Kazakos, and we're very honoured at Taiwan to have Professor Maria on our board, on our technical advisory group, I should say. And you'll see, if you look at China closely, to Dino's point, they're lighting up on gigawatt scale renewables, how they're building the batteries. It's VRFB. It's VRFB. So that's our third initiative. That's why we're at Middle Arm. We want to finally crack this. It will be challenging. It will be challenging because there's no natural off-take market. So you've got a chicken and egg problem. My job at Taiwan is to get the company rapidly to free cash flow so that we can work towards this. And in terms of government policy, it's there. And I was really encouraged this morning, the Prime Minister and Minister King again, the idea of backing success. It is still down to the private sector to make achievements. We need the market mechanism to pick the winners and then for the government to lean in behind those and to facilitate. So I'm confident on a 5 to 7 year view, we'll be the ones to crack VRFB.
Thanks, Grant. And I have time for one last question. So I picked also the most voted and again for you, Minister. So, hi, Minister. Will the federal government provide funding support for blue hydrogen projects in addition to the green hydrogen projects it's already backing?
Again, that's another minister's portfolio, so it's difficult to comment on everything. So Minister Bowen's responsible for hydrogen development, and the grant programs do support green hydrogen. So that is. So no, it's about focusing on green hydrogen.
Okay, great. Really like to thank you for your insights, Minister King, Grant, and Dino. And the things that really stay for me in the session is that, Australia as a nation has again an opportunity to become a player in the critical minerals space, similar to how much it plays in the, we can say traditional mineral space, but not less critical, at least to our economy. There's a number of opportunities and challenges that we discussed, both for government, resources sector, and other areas of society to increase mineral production while at the same time decarbonizing ourselves. And coordinating that through the value chain, it's key to overcoming those challenges. So the incentives that you shared, Minister, at a federal level are a key enabler and is already making a difference. So, but to all of us, simplifying the way those ideas can be implemented through new projects is going to be key to deliver that vision. So thanks again, and really inspired from what you said. And I'd like to invite now Dave Lipson to the stage to introduce our next session on the Australia-US relationship.